The house had gone unnervingly quiet after the mirror incident. Even the fire's crackle seemed muffled, as if the lodge itself was holding its breath. Marina wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, pacing the great room, while Elena kept her eyes fixed anywhere but the mirror. A draft slid through the room, carrying a faint scent of old cedar and something metallic, like rust or dried blood. "We need answers," Elena whispered, more to herself than to Marina. "Something's off about this place." Marina hesitated, then nodded. "The caretaker said the lodge remembers its visitors. Maybe there's a story we're missing." They armed themselves with flashlights and a pair of brass candlesticks, just in case, and began exploring the upper floor. The staircase groaned with each cautious step. Upstairs, the hallway narrowed, lined with faded floral wallpaper and portraits whose eyes seemed to follow them. At the end of the corridor, a short door, half hidden behind an antique wardrobe, caught Elena's attention. Its brass knob was cold against her hand, and when she turned it, the hinges shrieked in protest. Beyond lay a steep set of ladder-like steps leading to the attic. Dust swirled in the narrow beam of their flashlights as they climbed. The air grew colder, heavier. The attic stretched out beneath the peaked roof, crowded with trunks and old furniture draped in yellowing sheets. Cobwebs trembled like fine lace. The sisters moved slowly, their footsteps whispering across the wooden planks. Marina's light landed on a cluster of objects near the far wall. A rocking chair, a cracked porcelain doll, and a low trunk bound in cracked leather. The trunk's lock was already broken, as if someone or something had opened it recently. Elena knelt, heart hammering, and lifted the lid. Inside lay a stack of brittle papers and 3 weathered journals. The top journal bore a name written in elegant, looping script. Isabel and Clara Whitmore, Winter 1924. Marina crouched beside her, eyes wide. Elena opened to the first page. The ink had faded, but the words were legible. "The lodge is beautiful tonight. The fire welcomes us, and the mirror smiles when we do. It promises we will never be apart." She flipped ahead. The entries grew stranger, descriptions of hearing voices in the walls, of reflections that moved freely. The final page sent a chill down Elena's spine. "The storm rages. We have decided to stay, to remain in warmth and oneness. The glass will keep us." Marina ran a finger over the handwriting, her face pale. "This looks like yours," she said softly. Elena stared. She couldn't deny it. The looping letters, the sharp slant of the E, were eerily similar to her own script. A sudden creak echoed behind them. Both turned sharply, flashlights trembling. Near the attic's far corner, a tall mirror stood shrouded in a dusty sheet. The fabric shifted as though stirred by a breath. Elena swallowed hard. "We're leaving," she said, voice barely a whisper. But as they turned, the attic door slammed with a violent thud, plunging them into darkness. The slam of the attic door reverberated through the rafters, a deep, resonant thud that seemed to settle into Elena's chest. Darkness thickened around them, broken only by the jittering beams of their flashlights. Marina's breathing quickened. Elena could hear it over the groan of the old timbers. The mirror in the corner, still swathed in its dusty sheet, loomed like a silent sentinel. Elena rattled the door handle. It refused to budge. "It's stuck," she hissed, pulling harder. The metal knob turned uselessly in her grip, icy as a block of frozen iron. "Maybe it's the wind," Marina offered, though her voice trembled. "There is no wind up here," Elena shot back. "Something doesn't want us to leave." A sudden warmth radiated from the shrouded mirror. Their flashlights flickered, dimmed, then died, leaving them bathed only in the faint orange glow that leaked from beneath the sheet. Marina stepped closer, drawn as if by an invisible current. "Marina, don't," Elena warned. But her sister's eyes were fixed, pupils wide and glassy. The sheet slipped to the floor without a sound. The mirror's surface shimmered like liquid fire, reflecting not the dim attic, but the golden glow of the great room below. Inside that vision, 2 women, identical to Elena and Marina, sat comfortably by the roaring fireplace, glasses of red wine in hand. Their smiles were serene, their skin luminous with a warmth the attic could never hold. A whisper rose from the glass, soft and persuasive. "Stay," Marina's breath caught. "Do you hear it?" "They're offering us forever," No winters. No loneliness. Just us. Elena felt the pull, too, the promise of endless sisterhood, the comfort of a fire that never dies, a life untouched by time. She thought of how fleeting their yearly retreats always were, how each visit ended with goodbyes and separate lives. The mirror offered an escape from all that, a single eternal moment, but beneath the honeyed voice, another sound pulsed, a faint wail, like wind through a distant graveyard. Elena remembered the journal entry, "The glass will keep us," and saw again the faded photographs of pairs of women who never aged. "No," she said firmly, gripping Marina's arm. "This isn't life. It's a trap. Those women, Isabel and Clara, they never left. Do you want to end up like them?" Marina wavered, eyes locked on her radiant reflection. "We'd never have to lose each other," she whispered. "We'd lose everything else," Elena countered. "Our choices. The world, time," the attic floor trembled. The mirror's glow flared, spilling warmth like a hearth in full blaze. Marina reached out, fingertips brushing the surface. It rippled invitingly, a golden pool. Elena yanked her back, heart pounding. "Fight it," she pleaded. "It's not love, it's hunger." For a long moment, Marina stood frozen, torn between the firelit dream and the cold, real world. Then she turned toward Elena, tears shining. The mirror let out a low, disappointed hiss. The warmth ebbed, replaced by a chill so sharp it cut through their bones. With a final, echoing creak, the attic door swung open. The attic door creaked open as if exhaling a final breath, revealing the stairwell below bathed in a faint gray light. Elena gripped Marina's hand, both of them trembling, and together they descended. Each step moaned beneath their weight, echoing like muted thunder through the sleeping lodge. The house felt different, less like timber and stone, more like a living thing that had withdrawn into itself after being denied. Downstairs, the great room lay exactly as they had left it. The fire roared with unnatural vigor, flames dancing high and bright despite the dwindling logs. The antique mirror above the hearth shimmered faintly, as though a thin mist drifted across its surface. Through it, Elena caught glimpses of movement, shapes that resolved into the two women they had seen in the attic's vision. The reflections were perfect copies. Same blue nightgowns, same long dark hair, but their smiles were fuller now, almost triumphant. They raised their wine glasses in greeting, their eyes glinting like molten gold. Marina faltered, her breath catching. "They look so happy," she whispered. "They're not us," Elena said, though her voice quavered. They never were. The mirror women beckoned silently, their gestures languid and coaxing. The fire's heat swelled until sweat slicked Elena's skin. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She could feel the invitation in the air, a velvet lure. Stay, be whole. Be forever. Marina took a tentative step toward the hearth. "It would be easy," she murmured, eyes unfocused. "No goodbyes. No years slipping away." Elena blocked her path. "And no life. We'd be prisoners in glass." The reflections tilted their heads in unison, their smiles never wavering. One raised a hand and pressed it against the inside of the glass. The surface rippled like water. Marina's voice cracked. "What if we regret leaving?" Elena reached for her sister's shoulders, gripping hard. "Then we regret it together. In the real world." For a long heartbeat, Marina wavered. The lodge seemed to hold its breath. Then she stepped back. The change was immediate. The fire guttered, sparks scattering like startled birds. The reflections' golden eyes dimmed. Their smiles shrank into thin lines of fury. A low, almost subsonic hum filled the room. Disappointment, anger, hunger. The front door swung open with a sudden crash, revealing a world washed in dawn. Pale sunlight spilled across the snow, dazzling after the night's claustrophobic darkness. Cold air rushed in, crisp and clean. Elena pulled Marina toward it. As they crossed the threshold, a sharp crack sounded behind them. She glanced back just in time to see only one shadow stretching across the floor. Marina's silhouette was absent. Her heart lurched. She turned. Marina stood beside her, but the mirror behind them told a different story. Two identical young women remained within its frame, wine glasses raised, their laughter a soft echo under the dying firelight. Outside, the mountain forest stood silent beneath the new sun. The lodge loomed behind them, dark and still. Elena tightened her grip on Marina's hand, refusing to look back again. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they stepped into the cold, carrying the uneasy knowledge that some part of them might always remain inside, clinking glasses by an endless fire. Snow fell in thick, hushed curtains as Elena guided the car up the winding mountain road. The last streaks of sunset faded behind them, leaving the sky an inky purple that mirrored the chill creeping into the windows. Beside her, Marina hummed a tune half-remembered from childhood, fingers drumming on her knees with barely contained excitement. Their yearly retreat to Stonewood Lodge had become a ritual since they were teenagers. But this year felt different, heavier somehow, as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath. When they finally pulled into the gravel driveway, the lodge loomed from the trees like something out of a sepia photograph. Rough-hewn logs, dark with age, were stacked in sturdy walls, and a tall stone chimney exhaled a slow ribbon of smoke into the night. The scent of pine and wood smoke wrapped around them the moment they stepped from the car. It was welcoming and yet, Elena couldn't help noticing, a little too still. No rustle of animals, no distant wind, only the crunch of their boots in the snow. Inside, warmth enveloped them immediately. The main room was a cathedral of timber beams and honey-gold light. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, its stones worn smooth by decades of fires. Flames licked at thick logs, throwing sparks and shadows across the polished floor. On the mantel rested an assortment of old photographs, couples in heavy coats, families holding lanterns, and, oddly, a handful of pairs, sisters maybe, who bore a vague resemblance to Elena and Marina themselves. Marina paused to study one of the frames, but shrugged it off with a smile. The caretaker, a stooped man named Harris, shuffled forward from a side hallway. His wool sweater smelled faintly of cedar. "Welcome back, ladies," he said in a voice roughened by years and mountain air. "Everything's ready for you. Firewood's stacked out back, pantry's stocked. Just the two of you this weekend, eh?" "That's the plan," Marina replied brightly. "Quiet wine and no cell service. Perfect." Harris nodded but lingered a beat too long. His eyes, pale and watery, fixed on them with something unreadable. Curiosity? Concern? At the door, he hesitated before pulling on his heavy coat. "The lodge remembers those who visit," he said at last, his words slow and deliberate. "Treat it kindly, and it will keep you warm." Elena offered a polite smile, but a shiver climbed her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. When the door closed behind him, silence reclaimed the room. The sisters carried their bags upstairs, changed into matching light blue nightgowns with white lace trim, and padded back down to the great room. The fire's glow painted their skin in amber and gold as they settled side by side on the thick rug, glasses of deep red wine in hand. The night settled around Stonewood Lodge like a heavy quilt. Outside, the snowfall had slowed to a lazy drift, each flake catching the moonlight before sinking soundlessly into the drifts. Inside, the fire's steady crackle filled the vast room with a gentle rhythm. Marina stretched out on the couch, her glass of wine resting on the armrest, while Elena lingered near the fireplace, eyes drawn again and again to the old photographs above the mantel. At first glance, the images seemed ordinary, sepia-toned snapshots of life in another era. Yet the longer Elena studied them, the more her pulse quickened. Nearly every frame contained two young women. Some stood shoulder to shoulder in heavy winter coats. Others sat at rustic tables with steaming mugs, their faces frozen in faint, knowing smiles. The strangest part was their resemblance: high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes, the same dark hair. The likeness wasn't exact, but enough to feel uncanny, as though the lodge had a habit of collecting echoes of her and Marina across time. "Marina, come look at this," Elena called softly. Marina rose with an indulgent sigh, wine in hand, and squinted at the display. "Okay, they do look a bit like us. But mountain families probably all look similar. Same lighting, same old cameras. She tipped her glass to her lips. Don't overthink it, Lenny. We came here to relax. Elena tried to smile, but the photographs nagged at her. She shifted her attention to the room itself. The wooden beams seemed to creak and sigh as if the house were breathing. Every so often, a faint, almost musical whisper threaded through the crackling fire. A trick of the wind, she told herself. They decided to explore a little before bed. The lodge revealed itself in layers. A cozy dining nook with carved oak chairs, a hallway lined with faded rugs, and a narrow staircase that groaned under their weight. Each corner offered tiny relics of the past: porcelain figurines, tarnished brass candlesticks, a clock that ticked unevenly, as though it remembered a different rhythm of time. When they returned to the main room, Marina turned on an old record player perched near the window. A low, warbling melody filled the air, and for a moment the sisters swayed together, laughing at the scratchy sound. Yet even over the music, Elena kept hearing it. A soft whisper like a sighing voice, rising and falling just beyond comprehension. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" Marina stopped mid-sway. That humming. "Like someone breathing in the walls." Marina tilted her head, listening. Only the record's faint hiss answered. "You've got mountain ears now," she teased. Though her eyes darted to the corners of the room, they settled once more by the fire, glasses refilled. The warmth should have lulled them, but a subtle tension coiled between them, a sense that they were no longer alone. Elena's gaze drifted to the window. Snowflakes clung to the glass, forming delicate patterns that looked almost like script, curling letters that vanished as soon as she blinked. The fire burned lower, throwing long, restless shadows across the great room. Outside, the moon hid behind a thick bank of clouds, and the cabin felt suspended in a world of its own. Elena sat cross-legged on the rug, trying to read a novel she'd brought, but her eyes kept drifting toward the antique mirror mounted above the stone fireplace. Its frame, dark walnut carved with curling vines, gleamed dully in the firelight. At first, the mirror seemed perfectly ordinary. It caught the fire's glow and the sisters' movements as they poured more wine. But as Elena watched, a subtle wrongness teased the edge of her vision. When she reached for her glass, her reflection lagged by the briefest fraction of a second, so slight she almost laughed at herself. "Marina," she said quietly, "do you see that?" Marina glanced up from her phone, where she was half-heartedly scrolling through saved photos. "See what?" "The mirror. It's..." "Slow." Marina rolled her eyes. "It's old glass. Probably warped. This place is like 100 years old." She rose, smoothing the lace trim of her nightgown, and stood beside Elena. Together they faced the mirror. Their images stared back. Two identical young women with dark hair, blue nightgowns shimmering in the firelight. Elena lifted her hand in a small wave. Both reflections waved back, perfectly timed. She exhaled in relief, until the reflections kept their hands raised a heartbeat longer than she had. "Did you..." "Okay, that was weird," Marina interrupted, a nervous laugh escaping her. "But it's just optical something. You know, like when you look at a fan and it spins the wrong way." Elena wanted to believe that. She turned back to the fire, determined to ignore the mirror's pull. Yet the sense of being watched thickened. From the corner of her eye, she caught movement, her reflection sipping wine, though her own glass rested untouched. The record player gave a soft pop and fell silent. The sudden quiet magnified every sound: the ticking clock, the faint hiss of burning logs, the low whisper of wind around the eaves. Marina shifted closer, her earlier bravado fading. "Maybe it's a trick of the light," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Elena forced a smile. "Let's test it." She raised both arms sharply. Their reflections followed, but the left-hand twin, Marina's reflection, tilted its head in a way Marina did not. It was subtle but unmistakable. The sisters exchanged a wide-eyed glance. Marina set her glass down with a soft clink. "Okay, that's not funny." A faint tapping came from inside the mirror like knuckles against glass. 3 slow beats. Then the reflections lowered their arms in perfect unison, their smiles widening just enough to show teeth. Elena's stomach knotted. The air near the hearth grew warmer, almost humid, as though the fire had surged, though it had not. Shadows behind the reflections deepened, forming shapes that suggested other figures lurking just beyond sight.